I never thought my own son would steal from me. After 40 years in the same house, I finally decided to sell it. My arthritis was making it hard to maintain the place, and I figured the money would help me in retirement and give something to my 3 children. When I gathered Travis, Abigail, and Jennifer around my kitchen table one last time to divide the $450,000 from the sale, I thought it would be a moment of family unity. But when I suggested keeping $150,000 for my old age, Travis snatched the envelope from my hands and said, "No, I promised a while ago to buy an apartment for my wife. You have a pension. You'll manage." I stayed silent, but I remembered those words well. And when he and his wife came back from the real estate office, they were speechless when they saw the police waiting for them. My name is Dalton Rogers. I turned 68 last March, and until recently, I lived in the same 2-story colonial in Fairfield, Connecticut that my late wife Nancy and I purchased when we were just 28. We were so proud of that house, with its white picket fence and maple trees in the yard. We had dreams of filling it with children and laughter. And for a while, that dream came true. We had our daughters Abigail and Jennifer just a year apart, and then Travis came along 5 years later. Nancy called Travis her miracle baby. We had been told after Jennifer that there might not be more children, so when Travis arrived, he instantly became the apple of Nancy's eye. Maybe that was where the trouble began, though I would never blame Nancy. She was the most loving woman I ever knew. When Travis was just 8 years old, Nancy was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. Our world shattered. She fought hard for 2 years, but in the end, cancer took her from us. I was left alone at 40 with 3 children to raise. Abigail was 15, Jennifer 14, and Travis only 10. Those were the hardest years of my life. I worked as an accountant during the day, then picked up night shifts at a local warehouse to make ends meet. I would come home exhausted, but still had to help with homework, make dinner, and try to be both mother and father to 3 grieving children. There were nights I would collapse into bed at midnight, only to wake up at 5 to start all over again. Somehow, we made it. Abigail and Jennifer were remarkable girls. They stepped up to help with chores and looking after Travis. They grew into responsible, compassionate young women. Both got partial scholarships to college, and I managed to scrape together enough to cover the rest. Abigail became a pediatric nurse in Oregon, married a wonderful man named Paul, and gave me 2 beautiful grandchildren. Jennifer went into software development, moved to Colorado, married her college sweetheart Ethan, and had a son who just started high school. Travis was different. Maybe it was losing his mother at such a young age. Maybe it was being the baby of the family, or the only boy. I tried my best with him, but without Nancy to balance things, I fear I overcompensated. When he would get in trouble at school, I would make excuses. When he wanted expensive things his friends had, I would work extra shifts to provide them. He barely graduated high school, dropped out of community college after 1 semester, and bounced between jobs throughout his 20s. He finally settled into sales at an electronics store, though he frequently complained about his manager and how he was undervalued. At 32, he met Linda, a sweet girl from a good family. I thought perhaps she would be a stabilizing influence on him. When they got married 5 years ago, I gave them $20,000 as a wedding gift. I had been saving it for years. Travis and Linda used it for an elaborate honeymoon in Hawaii rather than a down payment on a house, as I had suggested. They had been renting an apartment across town ever since. As I got older, the house became more difficult to maintain. The stairs became my enemy after my arthritis diagnosis 3 years ago. The yard work that used to bring me joy became a painful chore. My neighbors, Frank and Judy Miller, a couple in their 70s who had been our friends since Nancy and I first moved in, often helped out, but I hated being a burden. After much thought, I decided to sell the house and find something more manageable. The housing market in our area had exploded, and the realtor assured me I could get a good price. When the final offer came in at $450,000, I was stunned. Nancy and I had paid just $85,000 for it all those years ago. What my children didn't know was that I had a secret reason for needing to keep a portion of that money. 6 months earlier, I had been diagnosed with a heart condition. The medication was expensive and not fully covered by Medicare. My monthly out-of-pocket costs were nearly $600, putting a strain on my modest pension. I hadn't told my children because I didn't want to worry them. Abigail and Jennifer had their own families to think about. And Travis, well, Travis had always been uncomfortable with any sign of weakness from me. The day after the closing, I invited all 3 children to come to the house one last time. I was set to move into a small rental apartment the following week until I could find a suitable retirement community. Abigail and Jennifer flew in from opposite coasts. It was the first time we had all been together in over 2 years. That evening, as we sat around the kitchen table where we had shared so many meals as a family, I had no idea how dramatically our lives were about to change. The morning of our family meeting dawned bright and clear. I had spent the previous night in my old bedroom surrounded by packed boxes, feeling both melancholy and hopeful. I made a special breakfast for everyone, just like I used to when the kids were young. Buttermilk pancakes, crispy bacon, fresh coffee, and orange juice. For a brief moment as we all sat together, it felt like old times. After breakfast, I asked everyone to join me in the living room. Abigail and Jennifer sat together on the sofa, while Travis and Linda took the love seat. I settled into my old recliner, the one Nancy had always teased me about keeping despite its worn appearance. I wanted us all together because this is an important moment for our family, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. This house has been our home for 4 decades. Your mother and I raised you here, and now it's time for a new chapter. I pulled out the envelope containing the cashier's check from the sale and placed it on the coffee table. The house sold for $450,000. After paying off the small remaining mortgage and the realtor fees, this is what we have to work with. Jennifer, always practical, spoke first. Dad, have you thought about how you want to handle this? You should keep the majority for your retirement. You earned it. Abigail nodded in agreement. Jen's right. We're all established in our own lives. This should be for your future. I smiled at my daughters, feeling a surge of gratitude for the women they had become. I've given this a lot of thought, I said. I'd like to keep $150,000 for myself, for a small condo and a retirement community and some savings for medical expenses. I didn't mention my heart condition. The remaining $300,000, I want to divide equally among the 3 of you. That's $100,000 each. There was a moment of silence before Travis shifted forward in his seat. His expression had darkened. That doesn't seem fair, he said, his voice tight. Abigail and Jennifer moved across the country years ago. I'm the one who stayed local. I'm the one who's been available whenever you needed something. I frowned slightly. While it was true that Travis lived nearby, his visits had become increasingly rare over the past few years. Most of our interactions involved him asking for money, claiming temporary financial setbacks. Travis, honey, Linda placed a hand on his arm. Your dad is being more than generous. Travis shook her hand off. You don't understand. Dad knows I've been saving for our own place. We've been stuck in that apartment for 5 years. Abigail's voice was calm but firm. Travis, we all have expenses. Paul and I just put a new roof on our house, and Jennifer's son starts college next year. That's your problem, Travis snapped. Dad promised me he would help us with a down payment. This was news to me. Travis, I never made such a promise. You did. His face was flushing red now. Last Christmas, when I mentioned how hard it is to save in this economy, you said you'd help us when you could. I remembered the conversation differently. I had simply said I wished I could help everyone more. It was a general sentiment, not a specific promise. Jennifer tried to intervene. Why don't we all take a breath? Dad, it's your money. You should decide how it's allocated. Travis stood up suddenly. No, this isn't right. I told Linda's parents we'd be getting a proper house soon. I already spoke with a real estate agent about that new development on Westfield Road. My heart sank. Travis had apparently been making plans based on assumptions about money that wasn't his. Son, I understand you're disappointed, but this is what I've decided. Each of you gets $100,000, which is a generous gift. What you do with it is up to you. Travis looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It was cold, calculating. You don't need $150,000, Dad. Your expenses are minimal. You have your pension and Social Security. The condo you're looking at costs what, maybe $100,000? You're being selfish. The room fell silent. Even Linda looked embarrassed by her husband's words. "Travis," Abigail stood up. "How dare you speak to Dad that way after everything he's done for you?" Travis ignored her, keeping his eyes fixed on me. "I need that money more than you do. Linda and I want to start a family soon. We need a house with a yard, in a good school district." I felt a pain in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. This was my son, the baby I had raised alone after losing Nancy, speaking to me as if I were nothing but an obstacle to his desires. "The division stays as I outlined," I said firmly. 150,000 for me, 100,000 for each of you. What happened next still haunts me. Travis lunged forward and snatched the envelope containing the check from the table. He stood up, holding it away from me. "No, I promised a while ago to buy an apartment for my wife. You have a pension, you'll manage." Abigail and Jennifer both jumped to their feet, but Travis was already backing toward the door, Linda following him with a conflicted expression. "Travis, you can't do this," Jennifer said, her voice shaking with anger. "That's theft." "It's not theft when it's family," Travis retorted. "Dad doesn't need this much. He's being greedy." I sat frozen in my chair, unable to believe what was happening. My own son was stealing from me, and justifying it as if he were doing the right thing. "I'm disappointed in you," was all I could manage to say. Travis paused for just a moment at the door. Something flickered across his face, perhaps doubt or shame, but it was quickly replaced by determination. "You'll thank me later, Dad. This is for the best." And then they were gone, the sound of their car starting and driving away, leaving us in stunned silence. Abigail was the first to recover. "Dad, we need to call the police. That's theft. Plain and simple." I raised my hand to stop her. "No. No police. He's still my son." Jennifer knelt beside my chair. "Dad, this isn't right. You can't let him take advantage of you like this." I closed my eyes, feeling every one of my 68 years. Just give me some time to think. After my daughters reluctantly went upstairs to their old rooms, I went to my study and unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a small wooden box that Nancy had given me on our 5th anniversary. I opened it and removed a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. They were letters Nancy had written during her final months, one addressed to each child to be opened on significant future occasions, and several addressed to me. I had read mine many times over the years, drawing comfort from her words. But there was one I had never opened. On the envelope, in Nancy's delicate handwriting, were the words, "For Dalton, when Travis disappoints you deeply." With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the yellowed paper inside. "My dearest Dalton," it began. "If you're reading this, then our Travis has done something that has broken your heart. I've watched how you love him, perhaps too indulgently because he reminds you of me. But I've also seen a streak in him that worries me, a sense of entitlement that could grow unchecked without proper boundaries. Don't blame yourself, my love. We each parent as best we can. But now you must do what I know will be difficult for you. You must stand firm. Travis needs to learn that actions have consequences, even when they're painful. It's the only way he'll grow into the man I know he can be. Be strong, my Dalton. Do what needs to be done, with love, but with resolve. It's never too late to correct course. I believe in you. All my love, Nancy." Tears streamed down my face as I read her words. After all these years, Nancy was still guiding me, still seeing with clarity what I had been blind to. Travis had been taking advantage of me for years, borrowing money he never repaid, making promises he never kept. And I had allowed it because saying no felt like failing Nancy. But now I understood. The greatest failure would be to continue enabling behavior that was hurting Travis as much as it was hurting me. I carefully folded the letter and returned it to its envelope. Then I picked up the phone and made a call to my old friend Harold Wilson, who had retired from his law practice 5 years ago. "Harold," I said when he answered, "I need your help, and I need the name of a good lawyer who handles family disputes." By the time I hung up the phone, I had made my decision. Travis would face consequences for his actions, not out of vengeance, but because it was time for both of us to learn some difficult lessons about love, respect, and responsibility. The day after Travis took the money, I moved in temporarily with my neighbors Frank and Judy Miller. I couldn't bear to stay in the empty house, surrounded by memories and the echo of my son's betrayal. Frank and Judy insisted I take their guest room until I sorted things out. "Dalton, you've been our friend for 40 years, Frank said as he carried my suitcase up to their spare bedroom. "Nancy would never forgive us if we didn't look after you." I spent the first few days in a fog of disbelief and hurt. Abigail and Jennifer had to return to their families and jobs on opposite coasts, though both offered to stay longer. I insisted they go. "You have your own lives," I told them. "I need to handle this myself." Before they left, Jennifer set up a group text chat for the three of us to stay in constant contact. Abigail had called Travis repeatedly, but he wouldn't answer. When she drove by his apartment, his car wasn't there. On the fourth day of my stay with the Millers, I received a call from Harriet Wilson, Harold's daughter, and a respected attorney in our town. She had agreed to meet with me that afternoon. Harriet's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown. At 70, she had silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, and the same sharp intelligence that had characterized her father. Dad explained the situation. She said after I settled into the chair across from her desk, "I'm sorry you're going through this, Dalton. Family betrayals are the most painful kind." I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "Have you deposited the check yet?" she asked. "No," I replied. "It was a cashier's check made out to me. Travis took the physical check, but he can't deposit it without forging my signature." Harriet made a note. "That's good news. It means this is straightforward theft, not a civil dispute. I don't want Travis to go to jail," I said quickly. "He's still my son." She looked at me with kind but firm eyes. "Dalton, what Travis did is a serious crime. The amount involved makes it grand theft. There will be consequences, but how severe they are partly depends on what happens next." We spent the next hour discussing options. Harriet advised me to file a police report immediately and to contact the bank that issued the cashier's check to put a stop payment on it. "Has Travis attempted to contact you since taking the check?" she asked. "No. Abigail and Jennifer have tried reaching him, but he's not answering calls from any of us." Harriet tapped her pen against her notepad. "That suggests he knows what he did was wrong, and he's avoiding facing it." As I was leaving her office, Harriet put a hand on my arm. "One more thing, Dalton. Did you keep copies of the house sale documents?" I nodded. "Yes. They're in my lockbox at the bank." "Good. Gather all documentation related to the house sale and bring it to our next meeting. Also, I want you to write down every instance you can remember of Travis borrowing money from you in the past 5 years. Dates, amounts, whether it was repaid. Everything." That evening, back at the Millers' house, I sat at their dining room table with a legal pad, trying to reconstruct a financial history I had deliberately avoided confronting. As I wrote, a pattern emerged that shamed me. Over the past 5 years, Travis had borrowed nearly $30,000 from me, in amounts ranging from a few hundred to several $1,000s. None had been repaid, though each time came with promises and excuses. The next day, I visited my bank and retrieved my lockbox. Inside were the original deed to the house, the sale documents, and a folder of family papers I had kept secure over the years. Among them was Nancy's will, which had left everything to me to provide for our children. I also found old checkbook registers I had saved, which documented many of the loans to Travis. While at the bank, I checked my accounts and made a disturbing discovery. There had been withdrawals from my checking account that I didn't recognize, small amounts of $100 or $200 every few weeks going back several months. I requested statements for the past year and saw the pattern continued throughout. Someone had been taking money from my account without my knowledge. The withdrawals always occurred at ATMs, and I rarely used ATMs myself. I preferred to cash a check with a teller when I needed cash. With a sick feeling in my stomach, I remembered that Travis had helped me set up online banking 2 years ago. He knew my username and had watched me enter my password. I had never changed it. I immediately reported the unauthorized transactions to the bank's fraud department and changed all my passwords. The representative I spoke with suggested I check my credit report as well, to ensure no accounts had been opened in my name. That evening, I received a call from Jennifer. "Dad, I did some digital sleuthing," she said, her voice tense. Travis posted on Facebook yesterday about looking at condos in the new Baywater development. Those units start at $400,000. The next day, I followed Harriet's advice and went to the police station to file a report. The officer who took my statement was patient and respectful. A young woman named Officer Carolyn Barrett who specialized in crimes against seniors. Unfortunately, Mr. Rogers, what you're describing is all too common, she said. Financial abuse of older adults by family members happens more than people realize. The word abuse hit me like a physical blow. Was that what this was? Had I been a victim of abuse by my own son? We'll investigate the theft of the cashier's check and the unauthorized withdrawals from your account, Officer Barrett continued. The detective assigned to your case will be in touch within 48 hours. As I was leaving the station, Officer Barrett stopped me. Mr. Rogers, there's a support group that meets at the senior center for people who have experienced similar situations. It might help to talk with others who understand. I thanked her, but couldn't imagine sharing this shame with strangers. How could I admit that I had raised a son who would steal from me? 2 days later, I received a call from Detective Marcus Washington of the Financial Crimes Unit. Mr. Rogers, we've flagged the cashier's check with the issuing bank, he informed me. If anyone attempts to deposit or cash it, we'll be notified immediately. We've also subpoenaed your bank records to document the pattern of unauthorized withdrawals. He paused before continuing. There's something else you should know. We believe your son and his wife put a deposit on a condominium in the Baywater development yesterday. The sales office confirms they provided proof of funds for a $400,000 purchase. My hands trembled as I held the phone. What does that mean? It means they've likely found a way to access the funds, perhaps by convincing someone else to cash the check for them, or by forging your signature. We're investigating. After hanging up, I sat in Frank and Judy's living room, staring at nothing. Frank brought me a cup of coffee and sat down across from me. Want to talk about it? He asked simply. The story spilled out of me then. Not just Travis taking the check, but the years of enabling that had led to this moment. Frank listened without judgment. You know, he said when I finished, Judy and I always wondered why you let Travis get away with so much. He borrowed our lawnmower 3 years ago and never returned it. When we mentioned it to you, you replaced it yourself rather than making him take responsibility. I hadn't remembered that incident, but it fit the pattern perfectly. I think I was trying to make up for Nancy not being here, I admitted. Travis was so young when she died. I thought if I was strict with him, he'd resent me more than he already did for not somehow preventing her death. Frank shook his head. Kids need boundaries, Dalton. Even adult kids. Maybe especially adult kids. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Nancy had written in her letter. Do what needs to be done, with love but with resolve. In the morning, I called Abigail and Jennifer and asked if they could return to Connecticut. I had made a decision, and I wanted them with me when I confronted their brother. Of course, Dad, Abigail said without hesitation. I can be there tomorrow. Jennifer was equally quick to agree. I'll book a flight now. As I waited for my daughters to arrive, I received another disturbing piece of information. A cousin in Florida called to ask if I was okay. Apparently, Travis had told several family members that I was showing signs of dementia and had given him power of attorney to manage my affairs for my own protection. It was a lie designed to explain his sudden access to large sums of money. The realization that Travis would spread such falsehoods about me to cover his theft was the final blow to any lingering doubts I had about confronting him. My silent preparation was over. It was time for Travis to face the consequences of his actions. Abigail arrived first, her flight landing at Hartford's Bradley International Airport on Tuesday morning. Jennifer's flight was delayed due to weather in Denver, but she made it to Connecticut by late afternoon. Frank drove me to pick them both up, and seeing my daughters walk through the terminal brought tears to my eyes. In that moment, I felt Nancy's absence acutely, imagining how she would have handled this situation with more grace than I could muster. Back at the Miller's house, we sat around their kitchen table making plans. I had already informed Detective Washington that my daughters would be arriving, and he had arranged for us to meet with him and the district attorney the following morning. Dad, are you absolutely sure you want to pursue this legally? Jennifer asked, her expression troubled. Once we start down this road, there's no turning back. Travis could face serious charges. I had spent days wrestling with this question. The father in me wanted to protect my son, to find a way to resolve this privately. But I kept coming back to Nancy's words about actions having consequences. I also thought about Travis's lies to the extended family, claiming I had dementia. "I'm sure," I said finally, "this isn't just about the money anymore. It's about Travis learning that he can't manipulate and steal from people, especially family, without repercussions." Abigail reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We support you, Dad. 100%. That night, I barely slept, imagining the confrontation to come. I thought about Travis as a little boy, the way he would climb into my lap for stories, how his eyes, so like Nancy's, would light up with wonder. Where had that sweet child gone? Had my failings as a father created this situation? The district attorney's office was located in the county courthouse, an imposing brick building in downtown Fairfield. Detective Washington met us in the lobby and escorted us upstairs to a conference room where Assistant District Attorney Sofia Martinez waited. Ada Martinez was a composed woman in her 40s, with an air of competence that immediately put me at ease. She shook hands with each of us and thanked us for coming in. "Mr. Rogers, I've reviewed your case, and I want you to know that we take elder financial abuse very seriously in this jurisdiction," she began. There was that term again, elder abuse. The words still made me flinch. "Based on the evidence Detective Washington has gathered, we have sufficient grounds to charge your son with grand theft, fraud, elder financial exploitation, and potentially identity theft related to the unauthorized withdrawals from your account." She laid out the potential penalties: up to 5 years in state prison, substantial fines, and mandatory restitution. "However," she continued, "as this is a family matter, and considering your son has no prior criminal record, we would be open to discussing alternative resolutions that still hold him accountable, but might avoid the most severe consequences." Jennifer leaned forward. "What kind of alternative resolutions?" "A plea agreement could include probation, community service, financial counseling, and full restitution instead of incarceration," Ada Martinez explained. "But that would depend on your son's willingness to take responsibility for his actions and make amends." Abigail looked at me. "Dad, what do you think?" I took a deep breath. "I want Travis to understand the seriousness of what he's done, but I don't want to destroy his life. If there's a way to achieve justice without sending him to prison, I'd prefer that." Ada Martinez nodded. "I understand. First, we need to locate your son and recover the funds. Then we can discuss specific terms." Detective Washington cleared his throat. "We've been monitoring the situation, Mr. Rogers. Your son and his wife are scheduled to sign the final paperwork for the condo purchase tomorrow afternoon at Baywater Realty. We plan to intercept them there." My heart raced at the thought. "I want to be present," I said firmly. The detective and Ada exchanged glances. "That's not standard procedure in an arrest situation," Detective Washington began. "I'm not asking to be part of the arrest," I clarified. "But afterward, I need to speak with my son face to face. This is still a family matter at its core." After some discussion, they agreed to a compromise. The police would approach Travis at the realty office, but instead of taking him directly to the station for booking, they would bring him to his apartment, where I and my daughters would be waiting with another officer present. We would have an opportunity to talk before the formal arrest process continued. As we were leaving the courthouse, Detective Washington pulled me aside. "Mr. Rogers, there's something else you should know. Our financial investigation has uncovered additional concerns. We found evidence that your son may have been using your personal information to open credit accounts in your name." The floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. "What kind of accounts?" "Several credit cards and a personal loan. We're still gathering information, but the total outstanding balance appears to be around $22,000. I leaned against the wall, feeling suddenly much older than my 68 years. Not only had Travis stolen the house money and made unauthorized withdrawals from my checking account, but he had also apparently committed identity theft against his own father. "Does the DA know about this?" I asked. "Yes, she's been updated. This strengthens the case substantially and may affect any potential plea agreement." Back at the Millers, I shared this latest development with my daughters. Jennifer immediately pulled out her laptop. "Dad, we need to put a credit freeze on your accounts right now," she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "I'll help you contact all 3 credit bureaus." Abigail made a pot of tea and sat beside me on the sofa while Jennifer worked. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she said softly. "I feel like we should have seen this coming. Should have protected you better." I shook my head. "This isn't on you or Jennifer. You both have your own lives on opposite coasts. I'm the one who enabled Travis for years. We're family," Abigail insisted. "We look out for each other. From now on, Jennifer and I will be more involved in your financial decisions. Not because you can't handle them, but because it's what families do. They protect each other." The next morning brought news that the police had confirmed Travis and Linda had an appointment at Baywater Realty at 2 o'clock. Detective Washington would have officers positioned to intercept them after the appointment. We were to wait at Travis's apartment with Officer Barrett starting at 3. The hours crawled by. I tried to distract myself by helping Judy with a jigsaw puzzle, but my mind kept returning to what lay ahead. How would Travis react when confronted? Would he show remorse, or would he double down on his justifications? And what about Linda? Was she an active participant in the deception, or had she been misled by my son? At 2:30, we drove to Travis and Linda's apartment complex. Officer Barrett met us in the parking lot. Professional but compassionate. "Detective Washington just called," she informed us. "They've made contact with your son and his wife at the realty office. They're bringing them here now." We entered the apartment using a key I had for emergencies. The place was sparsely furnished but neat. On the refrigerator were photos of Travis and Linda on their wedding day, and one of the entire family from Christmas 2 years ago. Looking at our smiling faces, it was hard to reconcile that image with our current reality. We sat in tense silence in the living room, waiting. After what seemed like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, we heard cars pulling into the parking lot. Officer Barrett glanced out the window and nodded to us. "They're here." The door opened, and Travis walked in, his face a mask of shock when he saw us waiting. Linda followed behind him, her eyes red and puffy as if she'd been crying. Detective Washington and another officer brought up the rear. "Dad," Travis said, his voice barely audible. "What's going on?" I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my years. "I think you know exactly what's going on, Travis. The question is, what were you thinking?" The apartment fell into a heavy silence as Travis stared at me, his expressions cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been fear. Linda stood slightly behind him, her shoulders hunched, looking like she wanted to disappear. "You called the police on me?" Travis finally said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and accusation. "Your own son?" Abigail stepped forward. "No, Travis. You forced this situation when you stole $450,000 from Dad." Travis's face flushed. "I didn't steal anything. That money was meant for us anyway. Dad was just being stubborn about how it should be divided." Jennifer crossed her arms. "That's not how property ownership works, and you know it. The house was Dad's. The money from the sale is Dad's. He generously offered each of us $100,000, which was more than fair." "Fair?" Travis scoffed. "You two abandoned this family years ago. You visit what, once a year? Twice? I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who's been here for Dad." I found my voice then. "Been here for me? Travis, when was the last time you came over just to visit, not to ask for money? When was the last time you helped me with the yard work or drove me to a doctor's appointment?" Travis looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "The truth is," I continued, my voice growing stronger, "you've been taking advantage of me for years. The small loans that were never repaid, the unauthorized withdrawals from my checking account. And now Detective Washington tells me you've been opening credit cards in my name." Linda's head snapped up at this, her eyes widening as she turned to Travis. "You did what?" Travis shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like that. I was just borrowing the money until we got on our feet. I was going to pay it all back." Detective Washington, who had been observing silently, spoke up. "Mr. Rogers, we've documented over $22,000 in fraudulent credit accounts, opened using your father's identity, plus approximately $7,000 in unauthorized withdrawals from his checking account over the past 18 months. Linda sank onto the sofa, her face pale. Travis, you promised me you were borrowing that money from your father with his permission. I would have paid it back, Travis insisted, his voice rising. Once we got the house money, I was going to settle all of it. I shook my head sadly. With what money, Travis? You were planning to spend all of it on a $400,000 condo. We deserve a nice place, Travis retorted. Linda's sister just bought a house in Westport with her husband. We couldn't show up with some starter home after I promised Linda's parents we'd have something impressive. Linda looked up at him, her expression hardening. You what? When did you tell my parents that? At Easter, Travis muttered. Your dad was talking about helping your sister with her down payment, and I said we didn't need help because we'd be getting money from the house sale. I watched as understanding dawned on Linda's face. Is that why you turned down my parents' offer to help us with a down payment on that townhouse in Norwalk? The one I liked that was within our budget? You said it was too small, but it was perfect for us. Travis didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. Officer Barrett, who had been standing quietly by the door, moved forward. Miss Martinez, would you like to step into the other room with me for a few minutes? I have some questions that might be better discussed privately. Linda nodded numbly and followed Officer Barrett into the bedroom, leaving Travis facing his family and Detective Washington. Sit down, Travis, I said, gesturing to the chair opposite me. We need to talk about what happens next. Travis remained standing, defiance in his posture. What's there to talk about? You've already decided to throw me to the wolves. Your own son. Abigail made a sound of frustration. Stop playing the victim, Travis. You stole nearly $500,000, committed identity theft, and lied to the entire family. There are consequences for those actions. What do you want from me? Travis demanded, finally dropping into the chair. An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have taken the money. I should have asked. Asked? Jennifer repeated incredulously. You think the problem is that you didn't ask permission to take Dad's money? The problem is that you believe you're entitled to it in the first place. That somehow Dad owes you for. What exactly? Being his son? Travis glared at her. You don't understand. You and Abigail both had Mom until you were teenagers. I barely remember her. Dad was always working, always tired. You two practically raised me. And that justifies stealing from Dad? Abigail asked softly. I wasn't stealing, Travis insisted. I was taking what I deserved, what I needed. I leaned forward, catching Travis's eye. Son, I need you to really hear me. What you did was wrong. Not just legally wrong, but morally wrong. You took advantage of my love for you, of my desire to make up for the loss of your mother. And when that wasn't enough, you resorted to theft and fraud. Travis looked away, but I continued. The district attorney is prepared to charge you with multiple felonies. The evidence is overwhelming. The cashier's check, the bank records, the credit cards opened in my name. You're facing serious prison time. Fear flashed across Travis's face. Prison? Dad, you can't be serious. You wouldn't let them send me to prison. It's not entirely up to me, I replied. But ADA Martinez has indicated that she might be willing to discuss alternative sentencing if you take full responsibility and make restitution. Restitution? Travis repeated. You mean pay back the money? How am I supposed to do that? I don't have $450,000. The bank has frozen the funds from the cashier's check, Detective Washington interjected. But there's still the matter of the unauthorized withdrawals and the fraudulent credit accounts. At that moment, Officer Barrett and Linda returned from the bedroom. Linda's eyes were red, but her posture had changed. She stood straighter, more resolved. Travis, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant. The room went completely still. Travis stared at his wife, his mouth opening and closing without sound. I found out last week, Linda continued. I was waiting for the right moment to tell you. I thought maybe after we signed for the condo. But now, she trailed off, looking around the room at the police officers and Travis's family. You're pregnant? Travis finally managed. We're having a baby? Linda nodded, then turned to address me directly. Mr. Rogers, I want you to know that I had no idea about the credit cards or the withdrawals from your account. Travis told me you had offered to help us with a down payment, and that's why we were looking at properties in Baywater. She took a deep breath before continuing. My parents offered to help us buy a modest starter home last year. They could have contributed $50,000 toward a down payment on a place in our actual price range. Travis rejected their offer without even discussing it with me. He said we would have our own money soon and wouldn't need their help. Travis stood up, reaching for Linda's hand. Babe, I was trying to provide for us, for our future. I didn't want to take charity from your parents. Linda pulled her hand away. It wasn't charity, Travis. It was family helping family, with clear boundaries and expectations, not stealing and lying. She looked at me again. I'm so sorry for what's happened, Mr. Rogers. I should have asked more questions, should have insisted on talking to you directly about the money. I nodded, acknowledging her apology. What will you do now, Linda? She straightened her shoulders. I'm going to stay with my parents for a while. I need some time to think. About the baby, about our marriage, about everything. Linda, no, Travis pleaded, panic in his voice. We can work this out. I'll fix everything. How? Linda asked simply. How will you fix this? Travis had no answer. Detective Washington cleared his throat. Mr. Rogers, Jr., we need to continue this discussion at the station. You're being charged with grand theft, fraud, and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. As the detective continued reading Travis's rights, I watched my son's face. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, he looked truly afraid and truly vulnerable. This was rock bottom. And while it broke my heart to see him there, I knew that sometimes rock bottom is where real change begins. Linda quietly packed a bag while the officers prepared to take Travis to the station. Before they left, I asked for a moment alone with my son. Travis, I said when the others had stepped outside, I want you to understand something. I'm doing this because I love you, because your mother would want me to help you become the man I know you can be. Travis looked at me, tears in his eyes for the first time since this began. Dad, I'm scared. I put my hand on his shoulder. I know, son, but you don't have to face this alone. I'll be there every step of the way, not to shield you from the consequences of your actions, but to support you through them. He nodded slowly, and for a brief moment, I saw a glimmer of the little boy he had once been, the one who would own up to breaking a window or tracking mud on the carpet. I'm sorry, Dad, he whispered. I really am. And for the first time since this ordeal began, I believed him. The weeks following Travis's arrest were some of the most difficult of my life. The story made the local newspaper, bringing our family's private struggle into public view. I received calls from relatives and old friends, some offering support, others seeking gossip. Frank and Judy acted as gatekeepers, protecting me from unwanted attention while I tried to process everything that had happened. Travis spent 2 nights in jail before being released on bail, which was paid by Linda's parents with strict conditions. He would stay in their guest house, separate from Linda, and would begin counseling immediately. They were understandably angry about the situation, but recognized that their grandchild needed a father who was present and accountable, not incarcerated. Abigail extended her leave of absence from the hospital in Oregon to stay with me for an additional week, while Jennifer coordinated remotely with Harriet Wilson and the district attorney's office. Both my daughters insisted on being included in all legal discussions, determined that Travis would not manipulate the situation further. 10 days after the arrest, we met with ADA Martinez to discuss the case. Travis attended with his court-appointed attorney, a serious young woman named Melissa Jacobs, who specialized in white-collar crime. The evidence against Mr. Rogers is substantial, ADA Martinez began, addressing the room. However, given the family circumstances and the defendant's lack of prior criminal history, we're open to discussing a plea agreement that would include probation rather than incarceration. Ms. Jacobs nodded. My client is prepared to take full responsibility for his actions and make complete restitution. Travis sat quietly beside her, his usual confidence absent. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the consequences of his choices. The terms would include, Martinez continued, felony probation for 5 years, 400 hours of community service, mandatory financial counseling, and full restitution of all stolen funds, including the unauthorized bank withdrawals and fraudulent credit card debts. Jennifer leaned forward. And the identity theft charges? If your brother complies with all terms of the agreement, we would be willing to reduce those charges from felonies to misdemeanors after successful completion of probation. I looked at Travis. What do you think, son? He met my eyes briefly before looking down at his hands. I'll accept whatever terms you think are fair, Dad. I just want to make things right. It was the first time in years that I'd heard genuine humility in his voice. After further discussion, we agreed to move forward with the plea agreement. Travis would formally plead guilty the following week, and sentencing would take place 30 days after that to allow time for the probation department to prepare their pre-sentencing report. As we left the courthouse, Travis approached me hesitantly. Dad, can we talk? Just the two of us? Abigail looked concerned, but I nodded. It's okay. We'll meet you back at the house. Travis and I walked to a small park across from the courthouse and sat on a bench beneath a maple tree, beginning to show its fall colors. How are things with Linda? I asked after a moment of awkward silence. Travis sighed. She's still staying with her parents. We talk, mostly about the baby. She's agreed to come to counseling with me starting next week. He paused, picking at a loose thread on his sleeve. Her dad found me a job at his friend's accounting firm. Just clerical work to start, but it's something. I nodded, pleased to hear he was making positive changes. Dad, Travis began, his voice unsteady. I've been seeing a therapist twice a week since all this happened. We've been talking about why I did what I did, about Mom, and growing up without her, and how I've always been. He struggled to find the words. Hungry, I guess, for attention, for validation, for things to fill some hole inside me. I listened silently, letting him continue. I think I blamed you, he admitted, for not saving Mom, for working all the time after she died, for not being able to fix everything, and that blame turned into this sense that you owed me. He shook his head. It sounds so stupid saying it out loud. It's not stupid, Travis, I said softly. It's human. We all look for ways to make sense of our pain, but I took it too far, he insisted. Way too far. I knew what I was doing was wrong. Every time I took money from your account or opened a card in your name, I just convinced myself it was justified somehow. I thought about my own role in this situation, how I had enabled Travis's behavior for years out of a misguided attempt to compensate for Nancy's absence. I failed you too, I said. I should have set better boundaries, should have helped you learn to stand on your own 2 feet instead of always catching you when you fell. Travis shook his head. Don't do that, Dad. Don't take the blame for my choices. That's what my therapist says I've been doing my whole life, avoiding responsibility by shifting it to others. We sat in silence for a while, watching leaves drift down around us. There's something else, Travis said eventually. Linda and I went to her first ultrasound yesterday. We're having a girl. Despite everything, I felt a surge of joy. A granddaughter. That's wonderful news, son. Travis smiled slightly. We're thinking of naming her Nancy, after Mom, if that's okay with you. Tears filled my eyes. Your mother would be honored. As we walked back to where Abigail was waiting to drive me home, Travis asked, Do you think we can ever get past this? As a family? I thought about Nancy's letter, about her faith in both Travis and me to find our way to a better relationship. Yes, I said firmly. It won't be easy or quick, but we will. 3 days later, Frank and Judy invited all of us, including Linda and her parents, for dinner at their house. It was the first time the entire extended family had been together since the confrontation. The atmosphere was tense at first, with Linda's father, Robert, barely acknowledging Travis, and her mother, Margaret, fussing over Linda with pointed concern. Abigail, ever the peacemaker, kept the conversation flowing with stories about her children and updates from Jennifer about her son's college applications. Slowly, the rigid formality began to thaw. After dinner, as Frank was serving coffee in the living room, he cleared his throat. I have something I think you should know, Dalton. Something Nancy asked me to keep private until the right moment. All conversation stopped as Frank went to his study and returned with an envelope. About a month before she died, Frank explained, Nancy asked me to help her set up a small trust. She had a life insurance policy through her teaching job that was separate from the main one you knew about. She asked me to invest it and not tell you unless there came a time when you needed it for your retirement. My hands shook as I took the envelope. Inside was a statement from a trust in my name, with a current balance of $76,000. She knew, I whispered. Somehow she knew I might need this. Frank nodded. Nancy was always the wisest person in any room. She told me, Frank, someday Dalton might need something that's just for him, not for the children or the house or any obligation. When that day comes, give him this. I looked around the room at my family, at the faces that reflected shock, shame, and in Travis's case, a dawning realization of just how deeply his mother had understood the dynamics at play, even from across the veil of death. The sentencing hearing took place on a Tuesday morning in late October. The courtroom was nearly empty, just our family, Linda's parents, and a few court personnel. Judge Eleanor Simmons, a stern woman in her 60s with a reputation for fairness, presided. Travis stood beside his attorney as the judge reviewed the terms of the plea agreement. He had pleaded guilty to 1 count of grand theft and 2 counts of identity theft, with all other charges dropped as part of the agreement. Mr. Rogers, Judge Simmons addressed Travis directly. I've reviewed your pre-sentencing report and the letters submitted on your behalf. I'm particularly struck by the letter from your father, who, despite being the victim of your crimes, has asked the court for leniency. Travis nodded, his eyes downcast. I am inclined to accept the terms of the plea agreement, the judge continued, with one modification. In addition to the community service hours specified, I am ordering that 100 of those hours be spent providing financial literacy education to high school students and seniors. She leaned forward, fixing Travis with an intense gaze. Perhaps by teaching others about financial responsibility and the impact of fraud on victims, particularly elder victims, you will fully internalize the lessons of your own mistakes. Yes, Your Honor, Travis replied quietly. You should understand, Judge Simmons added, that you are being given a rare opportunity here. The charges you've pleaded guilty to would typically result in prison time. If you violate the terms of your probation in any way, you will serve the full sentence of 4 years in state prison. Is that clear? Very clear, Your Honor. After the formal sentencing was complete, we gathered outside the courthouse. There was a sense of closure, though we all knew the real work of rebuilding trust and relationships was just beginning. Abigail had organized a family therapy session for that afternoon with Dr. Sarah Coleman, a specialist in family trauma and reconciliation. As we sat in the therapist's comfortably appointed office, the weight of decades of unspoken resentments, misunderstandings, and grief hung in the air. I'd like to start, Dr. Coleman said, by acknowledging that what brings you here is painful but also courageous. It takes tremendous strength to face these kinds of difficult truths as a family. Over the next 2 hours, we talked about Nancy's death and its impact on each of us. Abigail spoke of feeling she had to become a mother to her siblings overnight at 15. Jennifer described the guilt she carried for escaping to college and leaving the family behind. Travis admitted to his anger at being left with a father who was physically present but emotionally distant in his grief. And I confessed my own failures, how in trying to be both mother and father, I had succeeded at being neither fully. How I had used work as an escape from the pain of losing Nancy, not realizing that my children needed my presence more than the financial security my extra shifts provided. The patterns we establish in crisis, Dr. Coleman observed, often become our default ways of relating, long after the crisis has passed. The good news is, patterns can be changed when we become aware of them. As we left the session, exhausted but somehow lighter, Jennifer linked her arm through mine. Dad, Abigail and I have been talking. We both want to be more involved in your life going forward. I can work remotely for 2 weeks every quarter, and Abigail has arranged a similar schedule with her hospital. We'll take turns staying with you, or you can come stay with us. I started to protest that I didn't need looking after, but stopped myself, recognizing the offer for what it was, not a statement about my capabilities, but an expression of love and a desire for connection. I'd like that very much, I said instead. As we walked to the parking lot, I noticed Travis standing slightly apart from the group, uncertainty in his posture. I went over to him. One day at a time, son, I said, putting my hand on his shoulder. That's all any of us can do. He nodded, a tentative smile forming. One day at a time. 6 months passed, bringing changes to all our lives. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came a sense of renewal that seemed fitting for our family's journey. I used a portion of Nancy's trust fund as a down payment on a comfortable one-bedroom unit in Riverside Meadows, a senior living community that offered independent apartments with the option of additional services as needed. My unit overlooked a small pond where ducks and the occasional heron provided endless entertainment. The community had a dining hall for those who preferred not to cook, but each apartment also had its own kitchen, which suited me perfectly. I had discovered a love for cooking in recent years, something Nancy would have found amusing given my former reliance on her culinary skills. True to their word, Abigail and Jennifer had established a rotation, with each visiting for 2 weeks every 3 months. During Jennifer's first stay, she helped me organize my finances and set up a proper system for tracking expenses and managing investments. Abigail, during her visits, focused on my health, accompanying me to doctor's appointments and helping me establish an exercise routine appropriate for my arthritis and heart condition. For the first time in decades, I felt truly seen and supported by my daughters, not as an obligation or a source of worry, but as a whole person with needs and desires of his own. Travis's journey had been more complicated but no less transformative. The court had ordered restitution payments, and Travis was faithfully meeting his obligations, though it would take years to repay the full amount. The bank had returned the house sale funds to me, and I had honored my original plan, keeping $150,000 for myself and dividing the rest equally among my 3 children. Travis and Linda had reconciled, though their relationship had fundamentally changed. Linda had become more assertive about her needs and boundaries, insisting on joint financial counseling and complete transparency. They had moved into a modest townhouse with help from her parents, a practical decision that prioritized their growing family over Travis's former desire for status. The most significant change in Travis was his attitude toward work and responsibility. He had continued at the accounting firm where Linda's father had placed him, showing a dedication and work ethic that surprised everyone. His boss had recently offered to sponsor him for additional training that could lead to a more advanced position. Perhaps most meaningful to me was Travis's commitment to our weekly lunch dates. Every Thursday, he would meet me at a small diner halfway between his office and my new home. Those lunches had started awkwardly, with forced conversation and painful silences, but gradually evolved into genuine connection. We talked about everything from sports to philosophy, and increasingly, about memories of Nancy and the family we had been before her illness. "I think Mom would be proud of us," Travis said during one such lunch in early April. "Not of what happened, obviously, but of how we're finding our way back to being a family." I nodded, thinking of Nancy's letter and her faith that Travis and I would eventually find the right path. She always saw the best possible version of each of us, even when we couldn't see it ourselves. Travis smiled slightly. "Linda's the same way with me. She sees who I could be, not just who I've been. It's why she gave me another chance." Linda was now 7 months pregnant, her due date falling in early June. They had learned they were indeed having a girl, and the name Nancy Elizabeth Rogers had been officially chosen. Travis had thrown himself into preparing for fatherhood with the same intensity he once reserved for acquiring status symbols, reading parenting books, and attending every prenatal appointment with Linda. One unseasonably warm Saturday in late April, I hosted a family gathering at my new home. It was the first time all of us, including Linda's parents, had been together in a purely social context since before Travis's arrest. Abigail and her husband, Paul, had flown in from Oregon, and Jennifer had brought her son, Alex, now a high school senior considering colleges on the East Coast. Frank and Judy Miller came as well, having become something like family to me over the past months. Frank, now using a cane after a mild stroke in February, had been my steady companion through the whole ordeal, offering wisdom without judgment. We gathered on the community patio overlooking the pond, enjoying a catered lunch and each other's company. Linda's father, Robert, who had been the most reluctant to forgive Travis, was showing him photos from his recent fishing trip, their heads bent together over Robert's phone in a gesture of tentative friendship. Abigail sidled up beside me as I watched them. "Things have really changed, haven't they?" I nodded. "In ways I never could have imagined 6 months ago." "Are you happy, Dad?" she asked, studying my face. I considered the question thoughtfully. I am. Not in the simple, untroubled way of youth, but in the complex, hard-won way that comes with age. I have regrets, certainly. I wish your mother could see her granddaughter named after her. I wish I had been a better father to all of you after she died. But I'm at peace with where we are now. Abigail squeezed my hand. Mom would say that's what matters most. The direction we're moving, not just where we've been. After lunch, as the others were engaged in conversation, I slipped away to my apartment to retrieve something I had been working on for months. When I returned to the patio, I asked for everyone's attention. I have something I'd like to share with all of you, I began, feeling suddenly nervous. After everything our family has been through, I've been thinking a lot about legacy, about what we leave behind for those who come after us. I opened the folder I was holding and removed several documents. I've established a family trust, I explained. It includes provisions for my own care should I need it someday, but also college funds for each of the grandchildren, including the little one who's still on her way. I nodded toward Linda's rounded belly. More importantly, I continued, I've included letters for each of you, sharing memories and hopes that I might not always think to express in person. Nancy taught me the power of leaving words behind. I smiled, thinking of her letters that had guided me through so many difficult moments. There's something else, I added. I've been volunteering with the Senior Center's financial literacy program, sharing my experience to help other older adults avoid financial exploitation. It's become one of the most meaningful parts of my week. Travis looked up, surprise, and something like pride in his expression. You never mentioned that, Dad. I shrugged. It started small, just a conversation with the program director. But it's grown into something important. Several of the seniors I've worked with have discovered unauthorized accounts or prevented scams because of what we've discussed. That's wonderful, Jennifer said. You're turning something painful into something helpful for others. Travis cleared his throat. Actually, I've been doing something similar with the community service hours I was assigned. The judge ordered me to provide financial education, but it's become more than just fulfilling a requirement. Last week, I spoke to a high school class about identity theft and financial fraud, using my own story as a cautionary tale. That must have been difficult, Abigail observed. Travis nodded. It was humiliating at first, but seeing those kids really listen, watching them understand the consequences of choices like mine, it felt redemptive. Somehow. Linda reached over and took his hand, her expression soft with pride. As the afternoon wore on, our gathering took on the comfortable rhythm of family simply enjoying being together. Alex and Jennifer's son challenged each other to a game of chess on the community's outdoor set. Abigail and Linda discussed baby preparations, with Abigail offering insights from her experience as both a mother and a nurse. Frank regaled Paul with stories of the neighborhood from decades past. Watching them, I felt Nancy's presence acutely, not as a painful absence, but as a continuing influence that had shaped all of us. She would have loved this moment, this healing. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the pond, I found myself standing next to Travis at the edge of the patio. I never properly thanked you, he said quietly. For what? For not giving up on me. For pressing charges instead of enabling me again. He turned to face me fully. It would have been easier for you to just let it go, to protect me from consequences like you always had before. But you loved me enough to let me face them. I thought about how far we had come, how the painful confrontation that had seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning. Your mother knew, I replied. In her letter, she said you needed to learn that actions have consequences, that it was the only way you'd grow into the man she knew you could be. Travis smiled sadly. I wish I could tell her she was right. I think she knows, I said, putting my arm around his shoulders. I think she's been watching us figure it out all along. As our guests began to depart, each with promises to return soon, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the painful journey that had brought us to this moment of healing. The theft of the house money had seemed like a devastating betrayal, but it had ultimately forced us to confront decades of unhealthy patterns and unresolved grief. Later that evening, alone in my apartment, I wrote in the journal I had started keeping after Nancy's letter was revealed. I had found that putting my thoughts on paper helped me process them, and perhaps someday these reflections would offer guidance to Travis or my grandchildren. just as Nancy's words had guided me. The greatest lesson I've learned in my 69 years, I wrote, is that true family wealth has nothing to do with money. It lies in the courage to face difficult truths together, to hold one another accountable with love, and to believe in each other's capacity for growth and change. Nancy always knew this. It took me much longer to understand, but I'm grateful that I finally did, that we all did, before it was too late. I closed the journal and went to the window, looking out at the pond, now silvered by moonlight. A family of ducks glided across the surface, the mother leading her ducklings in a perfect line behind her. I thought about the new life soon to join our family, a little girl who would never know her grandmother except through our stories, but who would grow up in a family that had learned, through pain and perseverance, how to love one another more honestly. Thank you, Nancy, I whispered to the night air, for everything. Life would continue to have its challenges, of course. Trust that has been broken takes time to fully restore. Old habits can resurface in moments of stress. But we had laid a new foundation for our family, one built on truth, accountability, and genuine care for one another's well-being. Whatever came next, we would face it together, wiser and stronger for having weathered this storm. What have you learned about family relationships and financial boundaries? Has someone in your life ever taken advantage of your generosity, or have you had to make the difficult choice to hold a loved one accountable for their actions? Comment below with your experiences or thoughts on this story. If you found value in this journey of family healing and redemption, please like this video, subscribe for more stories of human resilience, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to restore broken relationships. Thank you for joining me today, and may your own family journeys lead to healing and newfound understanding.